Do you want to live the exit lifestyle? Do you want to build a business so that you can cash out and take the money and run if you want to, or stay in it if you want to? Do you want to have options? Well, what we've got for you today, Dr. Justin Mosely, who's sitting across from me, we're going to be telling you just a little bit about a conference that's coming up on February 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2022 in Nashville, Tennessee, downtown at the Standard Club in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called the Exit Lifestyle Conference, and we want you to be there. It's going to be a 3-day, 2.5-day event that's going to give you everything you need to know to build your business so that you can exit whenever you want, and you can begin living the exit lifestyle now rather than later. Because Justin, as you know, you don't have to wait and sell the business to live the exit lifestyle. You and I both have done this thing. We've exited businesses, yet we still own them.
Yeah, and for me, for going through my own exit, it was a long and painful process. So I wish I would have had this back before that. Because one, you have to have the exit mindset. You have to have what that looks like in mind when you're ready to, what's next for the business? Are you thinking about selling it? Well, what if you could stay in the business without being in the business and still get all the benefits from that business? Well, there's a system and a process to actually set your business up for success without you having to be there day to day. And that's what this is all about, to help you set up the life that you want to create and not have the business run you, but you can actually run the business, not even run the business day to day. You can actually just have ownership of the business, reap all the benefits, and do anything you want with your time.
So think about how much you make from the business that you own today, whatever that number is. You know, some of you watching this making 30 to 50,000. You're just kind of starting things up. Others are making $1 million or so a year and owning and running that business. But what if you could learn a few things in 2.5 days in Nashville with Dr. Justin Mosely, the real Jason Duncan, and other speakers, nationally known, well-known speakers are coming in to share their expertise. What if you could learn things in 2.5 days that would allow you to keep that income and live the exit lifestyle now without selling the company? Now, how cool would that be? You still own it, still keep the tax benefits, still keep the income benefits, still keep all the benefits of owning the business, but you don't have to run it day to day. That's what the Exit Lifestyle Conference is all about. We want you to go to theexitlifestyle.com. It's theexitlifestyle.com. I want you to come to this conference. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I want you to bring your colleagues, bring your friends, bring your other entrepreneur friends that you know. If you got a business partner, definitely make sure that he or she is with you at this conference. You want to make sure you're there because we're going to have some pretty cool stuff. So on Thursday night, to kind of give you a rundown of what's going to happen at the conference, on Thursday night, Justin and I are both going to be speaking to kind of open and kick the conference off. Then we're going to have a private for all the attendees, private cocktail party at the Standard. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be so much fun. Live music. It's going to be fantastic. Then on Friday, we got a whole slate of speakers that are going to be coming in and sharing their expertise on what it means to live the exit lifestyle. Then Friday night, for those that pay a little bit extra and get the VIP experience, there's going to be a private dinner. You've had dinner at the Standard. How good is that going to be, Justin?
Yeah, it's amazing. And for any event, I recommend, this is just a pro tip, get the VIP experience because it gives you access to people, and you never know, that one person you can meet at a VIP experience could, one, open your own mindset to what's possible, but it could create a relationship. You just never know what could come, because still to this day, when I'm going to conferences, if there's a VIP option, I take advantage of that. So we got an amazing VIP experience we've created for the people there.
The VIP experience is going to be just for the folks that buy those tickets. We only have a limited number of those tickets. You can go to theexitlifestyle.com and you can pick up the VIP ticket for that dinner Friday night. Plus, there are other things. You're going to get choice seating. You're going to get. We're working on trying to get private transportation arranged between the hotel and the venue so that you don't have to take Ubers or anything like that. The VIP experience is definitely going to be something. And then all day Saturday, we've got yet even more amazing speakers that are going to be coming in. And we're going to be recording an episode of the Root of All Success podcast live from the stage in front of you guys as the audience, straight right there at the Standard on stage. Brian Rowland, who also pulled an exit without exiting, is going to be sharing his story of success and how he did what he did. So you want to be there. And then we're going to end the conference with a panel. And this panel is going to be all the speakers that were present at the event the whole time. And you're going to get to grill them and ask them every question about what it means to live the exit lifestyle. So it's not just a bunch of talking heads on the screen. You're going to get to interact with these people. You're going to get to see what it's like. You don't want to miss this event. It's the Exit Lifestyle Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. February 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2022. Go to theexitlifestyle.com, register today.
The last couple weeks, like the deadline's coming, I'm going to knock this thing out.
Yep.
But we do that in life too. How important have deadlines been in your life?
Well, I think that would probably was the most important deadline I've ever had in my entire life. I think deadlines are generally an important thing. It helps give you a parameter within which to work. And I think it's part of Parkinson's law. There's two Parkinson's law. One says that the amount of time that the activity that we do will take up the amount of time allotted.
Yeah,
and that's one. That's Parkinson. I don't know if it's number one or number two, but the guy named Parkinson, it has nothing to do with Parkinson's disease. Every time I talk about it, people are like, "Is that Parkinson's disease?"
Right,
no, different
right.
guy. But Parkinson's law is like the work that we do will take up the time allotted. So if you give yourself a day or if you give yourself a week, you're going to get it done.
Yeah.
That deadline is important. So pick a deadline that makes sense and work towards that. So the time I allotted to get that first that sale done was that was necessary. So that to me has been the most important deadline of my life.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
Well, welcome to The Root of All Success. I'm the real Jason Duncan. This is different. We're doing something different today, so you want to make sure that you listen to this, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. But today we're flipping the script a little bit. Dr. Justin Mosely is here with me, and he will be interviewing me. So for those of you who have been listening to this show for a long time, you know that he was one of my guests back. I think his episode came out in April or May of 2021. And we didn't know each other when he came on as a guest of the show. And come to find out, he lives in the same town I live in. And, as a coach, a mindset coach is what he does. We're kind of operating somewhat in the same circle. So we've developed a pretty good friendship, hanging out with each other. And then he had the idea, he said, man, Jason, you ought to do a show where I interview you so that your audience kind of knows who you are, because you haven't done that show yet. So he's been asking me to do that for a while and said, that's a good idea. I thought it was a great idea. And today's is the day. So we're actually recording at one of the companies I own, Energy Lighting Services, right here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. We're in the training room. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, it's youtube.com/TheRealJasonDuncan. I've got a playlist for the Root of All Success podcast. You can see that we're in a different location, and we haven't yet figured out how to do it here the right way. Like when we started recording in the Standard about a year ago, we went through 2 or 3 different rooms and setups before we found the sweet spot, but we've moved the recording location to here in Hendersonville. But this is kind of new. So this is only the second episode we've recorded in this spot. So I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for tuning in, for watching us on YouTube or on any of the podcast players. We're syndicated on the C-Suite Radio Network, and a big thanks to those guys for helping us get out there. And thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to hit play, to hit subscribe, and most of all, for leaving that review. Those reviews, whether you know it or not, really help. And it's not just about me feeling good that you like the episode or you like the show. It's about the fact that the more reviews, high reviews that we get, the more we get put at the top of the list when people are searching for entrepreneurial or business podcasts. And so we're performing really well. I was joking with my marketing team yesterday. I just got a report that we're one of the top business podcasts in Peru right now. I don't know why in the world that's a thing, but to all my Peruvian listeners, thank you. Whatever. I'm glad that you like what you're hearing. So, but anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit more at the end about an event that Justin and I are putting on in Nashville in February. I'm sure it'll come up in our conversation when he's starting to interview me. But this is weird, But I'm now going to pitch this over to Justin, who will interview me, and I've got to turn off the host hat. I got to take off the host hat and see if I can listen. So Justin, first of all, I want to say thank you for doing this. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being on the show back earlier this year, and for encouraging me to do this. I really do think it's a good idea, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor to be here, and yeah, I was honored to be on your podcast, but even more of getting to know you as a friend. And you have a credible story in your entrepreneurship, and I've got to see that, getting to know you. And the idea actually came from, I was talking to John Lee Dumas, who hosts the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. And just to give you context, I think since 2012, he's generated over $21 million from his podcast. So he has a successful podcast. So I was asking him, if you had to do it all over, what would you do? And he said, man, what I regret the most is I interviewed all these experts, but nobody saw me as an expert. So if I had to do it all over again, I would position myself as an expert. And Jason is an incredible expert, and I think it's time for your listeners to hear your story. But let's start. I mean, from school teacher to millionaire to building a multi-million-dollar business, why don't you tell us about your story from where you started to where you are now?
It goes back to when I was in high school, and even earlier than that. I've always loved to draw. I've been a drawer my whole life. I remember my dad had a orange Volkswagen Beetle when I was a kid, and so I've always had an affinity for Volkswagen Beetles and air-cooled Porsches, and so I've always liked that because that was what was in my family when I was a kid. But I remember drawing those cars when I was a little kid, learning how to, put the wheels in proportion to the fenders, and I've got a picture of me standing on the front seat of my dad's orange Beetle, holding the steering wheel when I'm like 3 or whatever. And so it's always been a part of my life, drawing. So throughout middle school and high school, I was always involved in art. And I just knew I wanted to go design cars for a living. And ultimately ended up getting accepted to two art schools. And I was going to go into the industrial design program, and who knows, work for Porsche or Volkswagen or GM or something. I was going to work for a car company. But I also, part of my story too, is that I've always, I was raised in a family that believed in and followed Jesus. And so as such, we always were part of our church. I was involved in youth groups, and I always went to church camp. And throughout the summers as a teenager, I would go to these church camps, and I would be the counselor for most of the summer, and then the 1 week that I was the camper. Well, it was the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. I was a counselor that week, and I remember after all the campers had gone to bed, all the counselors were still out, and I'm laying on my back in the field or wherever we were hanging out that night, as the counselors do after all the kids are in bed, and we're talking, just whatever, and looking at the stars, and I remember feeling, this is what I want. I want to do something in my life where I can impact people. Specifically kids. I want to impact kids, do something with kids. And so I made a decision right then. I know a lot of people would refer to that as a calling or whatever, but I made a decision at that point that my calling was going to be something different than designing cars for a living. So I changed my college plans and went and applied for a university here in Nashville called Lipscomb University to get into their youth ministry program, and that's what I ended up doing. So I spent the next 13 years in ministry. I did youth ministry, and I did ultimately was a preacher at several different churches, but I got to the point in that I wasn't able to actually fulfill the calling. I wasn't doing the thing. I was actually managing a machine, and I didn't enjoy it at all. Still love Jesus, and I still like the impact, but I was managing a machine, so right. I didn't like it. I thought, well, I'm going to go back to school and get a master's in education. And that's how I became a teacher. So I went back, and working with kids again. I was teaching 8th grade American history. Became the #1 teacher in my county in that subject area, and I thoroughly enjoyed it until in 2010, 2011, the Great Recession of 08, 09 kind of started trickling into the education department, and I found myself without tenure, last guy hired in the building, even though I was the #1 teacher in the county in my subject area, due to had the highest test scores. I didn't get my contract renewed because of the budget cuts. They had to cut teachers. So now I'm like, well, what do I do? And that's when I became an accidental entrepreneur.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and for so many people, that kind of happens. You're like pushed out of what you know, especially with what's going on in the world right now. People are getting laid off. They're having to work from home. They're questioning, do I even want to go back to my job? But for you were kind of pushed into it. Mm-hmm. So what was the start of your entrepreneur journey?
Well, so I had a friend of mine who was older than me. He was older than my parents, but not old enough to be my grandparents' age, and kind of a mad scientist guy. His name was Bill, and we had been introduced through some of our church group relationships. I was helping pastor a house church at the time, and I was still teaching school. I was teaching school at that time, and this was in 2010. And he came and he said, "Hey, Jason, I want to start this company. I've got this idea for a hydrogen generator." I'm like, okay. He goes, "I think that you and I could start a company and we could actually do something pretty cool with this." And I said, "Bill, first of all, number one, I love teaching more than anything in the world, and I don't ever want to do anything other than teaching." And he goes, "Okay, got it. You don't have to not teach." So, okay, cool. We got that out of the way. I said, "Second of all, I don't know what the heck a hydrogen generator is. I don't even know what it is." He goes, I got that. He says, "Yeah, I just need you to help on the business side, and eventually we're going to need sales. You have a better business mind than me, blah, blah, blah." So we started what at the time, and it's still the official LLC name of the company that I own, it's called Future Vision Energy. So we started Future Vision Energy, but that was in 2010, and had zero intention of not teaching. It was just a side, I know people refer to them as side hustles. It wasn't even a side hustle, it was like a side stroll, leisurely stroll. It was something that we did occasionally. We were working on this thing. Now, what's interesting is it worked, but not well enough to be marketable.
Yeah. So
I went out and borrowed some money, and we bought the equipment, and I made my son's go-kart run on hydrogen that we created out of thin air. Well, I guess we didn't create it, God created it, but we captured it and made it work. But it was just goofing. It wasn't really a business.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that was 2010. So the company officially starts in 2010 as Future Vision Energy, and then the following spring in 2011, April 2011, that's when my principal came to me and said, "Hey, you got bad news, man. I can't renew your contract for the following school year." And I was devastated, man, Justin. I don't, like God, I know now more than I've ever known before in my life that God was created me to be a teacher. I love teaching. And I was absolutely devastated. I remember going to my wife Christy. I went to her office that day after school, and I walked in. She's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, bad news." And I told her, and she'd had a bad day. I didn't know she'd had a bad day, and that just made it even worse.
Right.
So she gets home, I go on home, and then later she gets home from her job, and we're like, "What are we going to do?" And I said, I don't know. Like, I absolutely don't know what we're going to do. So this business that I had, it didn't even occur to me that is an option, because that way we were goofing and didn't make any money,
right.
and we were spending money, and it was fun, but I was not an entrepreneur.
Right.
And so I made the decision to just try to get another teaching job, but there weren't any to be had. I couldn't get a job teaching anywhere.
Wow.
Nobody was hiring, or if they were hiring, it was a weird situation that I wasn't qualified for. And then eventually started applying for just corporate jobs, and I thought, well, I'll just apply to be a sales, because I had been in insurance sales through some of my ministry career, so I knew how to sell. I was a really good salesperson. I thought, well, that's what I'll do, but I never felt peace about any of that. And so ultimately, I thought, okay, I got this business called Future Vision Energy, and it ain't gonna work. Like, this business ain't gonna work. Hydrogen, and we actually sold a couple of ethanol stills, which is kind of a side story here. And I'm not used to talking this much on my show, so
this is good. They need to get to know you anyway. So
I'm not used to talking this much, so if people are listening to this for the first time, you're like, "Dude, the host is talking way too much." But I'm not the host today. But I remember thinking, this ain't gonna work. We did make a couple of hydrogen things. We made a couple ethanol stills too, and with the last two that we sold to a distillery, a vodka distillery in Charleston, South Carolina. And I could tell you the name, but I'm not going to, but it's a famous vodka distillery. I don't know how that guy found us, and I don't know why he bought them from us, and I don't even know if he uses them or he threw them in the trash, but we created two of those stills, ethanol stills, that you could use to distill vodka or any spirit in. But all that was kind of fun, but it wasn't going to make money. I needed to pay a mortgage. I had two kids in private school. I needed to pay. I needed money, just like anybody else at that time. As a teacher, I wasn't making anything. I think I was 39 grand a year, nothing.
Right.
And my wife had a full-time job, so we were living comfortably in the middle class, but we weren't taking extravagant vacations. I needed a job. And so ultimately, I looked at the business, Future Vision Energy, and I thought, well, what could I do with the current structure of the business as an energy company but it's not making hydrogen and ethanol? And for whatever reason, LEDs came across the desk as an idea, and I thought, okay, that's energy efficiency, not energy creation. I can sell that. And so Bill disagreed with me, so we split. I took full control of the company. He took all the crap that we've been working on. And I say crap, I wasn't mean that derogatory, but all the stuff that we've been working with, he took all that stuff and went his own way. And we stayed in touch for a little while. We weren't angry at each other. It was an amicable dissolution of the partnership. But he went his own way and I went my own. And I gave myself a deadline. And this is the story I tell a lot from stage, is I gave myself a deadline of August the 15th of that year, because that was the last paycheck I was getting as a teacher. Because I was on an annual pay period. So I finished out the school year, but I was going to get paid every month until August. And I told Christy, I said, babe, if I don't make something happen between now and then, I'll go get a real job. Because she was with me. She's like, okay, if you want to give this a go, I don't know how we're going to make this happen. So, so on August the 12th, 3 days before the self-imposed deadline, I landed what turned out to be, it wasn't immediately, but turned out to be ultimately a $2.3 million project to do LED lighting at a local hospital. And it was, it changed everything. Now, it took about another 7 to 9 months before cash started coming in enough for me to replace my income as a teacher. And so I had another business partner I'd brought on at that time who helped kind of finance for the first 7, 8, 9 months everything I needed personally and financially to make it work. But that's how Future Vision Energy went from energy creation to LED lighting. And that's the company that I still own today. We're actually in the turning room of that company. It's rebranded, and I think we rebranded in 16 or 17 to Energy Lighting Services, but the LLC name is still Future Vision Energy.
Yeah, and I know a lot of what you do is encourage entrepreneurs, and whether they're starting their journey, whether they're exiting without exiting, which we'll talk about that too. But for you, like most people in that situation, their option is, let me go get another job. For you, how did you know, hey, I'm going to step into entrepreneurship? Did you look at, okay, what skills are available? What opportunities are available? What was the mindset that you had of, you know what, I could do this entrepreneur thing?
Well, I think it's more out of sheer survival mode and desperation than anything else.
Yeah.
I think that I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, which I know a lot of listeners are probably in the same boat. Is that it was thrust upon me. I didn't choose it necessarily, although every decision is a choice. I mean, I had to make that choice. But I wanted to teach. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to go to the corporate world. I'd already decided I didn't want that. So if I can't teach, what am I going to do? Well, I had already had the business going. I thought, well, okay, well, it was kind of by default. Okay, I guess I'll do this. But the funny part of that whole thing to me is that I actually did apply for several corporate jobs reluctantly, but because out of responsibilities, was one of the breadwinners of our family at the time, because my wife was bringing in money too, but as one of the breadwinners of our family, I felt a responsibility to, look, I got to have a plan B. I got to make sure if the business doesn't work, I got to go get a job. And so my plan C or D or E or F was going to be just go work at Lowe's or Starbucks. I mean, I was going to go get just a job.
Right.
But I had been applying for corporate jobs, and I won't say the name of the company, but there's an international company that's located here in Nashville. And I applied to be an executive sales in that company. And I had been going through a very long hiring process with them through the summer of 2011, which is the same summer that I'm out hustling, trying to find LED manufacturers, trying to prospect, find LED customers. I'm building processes and systems. I'm figuring out how to price this stuff. I'm getting a crash course in business on my own, trying to figure this stuff out. But in the meantime, I'm kind of going on interviews once a week.
Yeah.
But this one company was very interested in me because I had a very successful history of selling insurance, and they knew they needed somebody with very good at sales. But I was purposefully dragging that whole experience on for a long period of time because I thought, I've really got until August the 15th. That's my deadline.
Yeah.
And so if I can do something by then, I'm not going to go to work for this other company.
Right.
And so I would go to I'd go to these interviews and I would do everything they said, but I would put them off for a week or two. They'd call and say, hey, Mr. Duncan, we want to schedule you to come in for an interview with so-and-so. We need you to come in to do this interview with this team. We need you to schedule to do this test or whatever. All this stuff. And to their credit, they had a very thorough hiring process. And to my luck, they had a very thorough hiring process because I needed the time. And I remember the one phone call the guy made to me because I'd put off all these interviews. And he called and said, Jason, he said, it is evident to me that you are not interested in this job whatsoever because you continue to put me off every time I call you to come in. If you were really interested, we would have already had you hired and you already be working. And I didn't really give anything away. I just said, no, I'm really, because I was still trying to figure out, is this going to work or not?
Yeah.
And ultimately he pulled the plug. I didn't have any recourse. I'm like, okay. So that was it. That was my last plan B. I had nothing else. And then on August the 12th, I went into that conference room and made the pitch of my life, and it worked.
That's amazing. And deadlines are very important. I mean, think about even back in school, we had to write papers. It makes sense throughout the semester you could be writing your paper, but most people, they wait till that last month, the last couple weeks, like the deadline's coming, I'm gonna knock this thing out. Yep. But we do that in life too. How important have deadlines been in your life?
Well, I think that probably was the most important deadline I've ever had in my entire life. I think deadlines are generally an important thing. It helps give you a parameter within which to work. And I think it's part of Parkinson's law. There's two Parkinson's law. One says that the amount of time, that the activity that we do will take up the amount of time allotted.
Yeah.
And that's Parkinson. I don't know if it's number one or number two, but the guy named Parkinson, it has nothing to do with Parkinson's disease. Every time I talk about it, people are like, is that Parkinson's disease?
Right,
no, different guy. But Parkinson's law is like the work that we do will take up the time allotted. So if you give yourself a day or if you give yourself a week, you're going to get it done.
Yeah.
That deadline is important. So pick a deadline that makes sense and work towards that. So the time I allotted to get that that sale done was that was necessary. So that to me has been the most important deadline of my life.
For the listeners, they have staff too, that if you give them 3 hours to do a task, they usually take about 3 hours. But if you say, hey, I need this done in the next 90 minutes, they get to work and they get it done. So that's Parkinson's law. It can shrink time for you. So it's very important. Now, okay, so a lot of people these days, they want to be an entrepreneur and they want to be that overnight success. But man, you put in the work. First off, you didn't have an MBA, you didn't have all this business experience coming from a teacher into this. What was it like learning the business and then building the business?
Well, so this is going to get somewhat personal and probably even a little bit uncomfortable for me to talk about, but I think it's necessary for the listeners to understand my story. But at the time when when this got started, Bill was my first business partner, and he was the driving force behind even doing it to begin with. I think had it not been for Bill, I wouldn't have even gone into business to begin with, which is probably true. Now, granted, the business he wanted to do and the business I ended up being successful at were completely different businesses.
Right.
But nevertheless, he was an instrumental, and I thank him for that. But when he and I separated and I started this new the side of the business, here's what I knew. I'm a school teacher, former pastor. I know jack about business. I know how to sell, and I know how to treat people. That's about it. Like that's all I know. I know how to hustle. I know those things, but I don't know anything about business. And so the guy that I had borrowed some money from to get the original version of that business off the ground, I went back to and I said, "Hey, here's the thing, man." And by the way, that guy, he ended up. I'd come to know him better after this experience, leading up to my change of the business.
Right.
Now I knew, okay, this guy has been a successful businessman. I could probably get some advice from him. So I went back to him and said, hey, what about this? Would you be interested in coming in as a minority partner in this business? Because I need some advice. And so that was what I did. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that entrepreneurs getting started, if you have a passion and a desire to run in a certain direction with a certain business, but you have no acumen, you're not prepared for it, go find a business partner, or at the very least a business coach, but find somebody to come in. Now, what I did wrong at the onset of that whole thing is I did not structure the partnership correct, which is a whole other part of my story it's very painful. but it led to ultimately the termination of that business partnership that was not amicable, and it actually almost bankrupted me. I almost lost my house. I mean, it was terrible, all because it didn't start right.
Right.
And now I teach my clients how to start their partnerships the correct way. But nevertheless, just go back to your question. It was about how was I able to do it? Well, I didn't know, so I brought in people to help me. And he, my business partner, was instrumental in helping guide and give direction. And there was also some financial help early on for about that first, like I said, 7 to 9 months, where we just needed some financial, stabilization until we got some cash coming in. But as soon as cash came in, man, it was Katie bar to the door. The company's been profitable, had been profitable ever since, up until 2020. But it had been profitable ever since. But I think that was instrumental in the success, was I went out and sought help. How do I do this? How do I make this happen?
Yeah, and you did learn the lesson there, so now you're teaching other people how to set up the partnerships properly so you don't end up in that situation. But what would you speak to those people who maybe they've been burned by partnerships in the past or been burned by other things in the business, and now they're kind of shell-shocked about moving forward? They still have a great idea and want to go for it, but they're really hesitant.
So there's this thing called the law of conditions. And the law of conditions loosely states that just because something happened to you under a certain condition doesn't mean that that negative thing will happen under that condition again. So, for example, because I had a terrible, and I can't even explain how terrible it was. It was more terrible than anybody but my wife will ever know how bad this was, this partner termination and separation. But just because I had that bad experience under that condition of a business partnership doesn't mean that every business partnership is negative. But a lot of people don't understand it. And the law of conditions says that, look, just because you were out jogging one day and a bicyclist ran into you doesn't mean that every time you jog, a bicycle is going to run into you. But a lot of people treat a lot of things in their life irrespective of the law of conditions. They think that, well, I got burned by a partner in the past, so I'm never having a business partner again. I've said that, but I actually have one of the businesses I have now, I have a minority business partner. But let me tell you something. I structured that completely different because I wanted to prevent the negative. But the law of conditions would teach us that you can do the same things. You just have to have a better mindset about it and structure it better. Don't assume that the condition that you were in before will absolutely predict every condition similar to that in the future.
Yeah. So take us through the growth path from financially what happened, hiring employees, expanding the company. What did that look like?
So the first employee that we hired was about a year and a half. Maybe it wasn't that long. I guess maybe 6 to 9 months into. After we got that first big contract, I knew that I needed some help because the partnership structure at the very beginning, I was the dog. I was the road dog. I did everything, right? I was the mule, whatever animal you want to put in there, I was that guy. Yeah. I did it all. I contacted the LED manufacturers. I worked on the sales presentations. I worked on the pricing metrics. I met with the customers. I did it all. Now, my business partner, who was not necessarily a silent partner, was more in the background as an advisor and did a good job of giving advice, but wasn't involved in the grinding and the work and the effort of going through. And not to diminish his role, certainly that's not my intent by making that comment, but I was doing all that. So I knew I got to have some help. I can't do this by myself. And he had other interests in other businesses. He couldn't do what I need to from an administrative assistant perspective. So I hired an administrative assistant. That was the first employee ever, and she was fantastic. She came in and we didn't know what we were doing. She didn't know what she was doing. Like it was just this, we'll figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And then I hired a salesperson. And again, we didn't know what we were doing, sales, and I didn't know how that was going to work. Then we hired an operations person. Like, how do we figure out going into these buildings and counting lights and fixtures so I had to hire that. Now that person's still with me to this day. It's the longest tenured employee I've got. Absolutely phenomenal dude. Ricky Aris, he's been with me 8 years this year and is killing it. I mean, he's phenomenal. When I hired him, he didn't know jack about what we did. And for a long time, I was better at his job than he was, but he surpassed me a bazillion times. Like, he knows more about lights than I do. But those were kind of the first 2 or 3 hours. And I don't remember if he might not have been employee 3. I don't remember, but I think he was the third employee and took off from there. And my first assistant she got married, had to move off, and we hired another one. And she had to move. And so the third assistant I hired, who's down with us now, Nina, she started as my assistant. I met her at a Starbucks because we didn't have an office. We didn't have an office, Justin, for 6 years.
Really?
I had $25,000 worth of LED lights in the shed in my backyard under no lock and key. And it scared the crap out of me. It's like, we can't do this. We got to have an office to put this stuff in. So I remember meeting Nina at a Starbucks in Gallatin where I live. And she got there early, and she was really nervous, and she had just moved to Nashville, and she was looking for just some admin work, and I hired her, and she's now our, for all intents and purposes, although her title's not CFO, she's the controller, she's the VP of finance, been with me 7 years, 6 or 7 years. Absolutely phenomenal. And then I hired a salesperson. The first guy didn't work out. The second guy, still with me to this day, Brock Newby, and he's actually down the hall in his office right now, and he's killed it. He's done a fantastic job. And then I hired a project manager out of California. He came in, Brendan Lombardi, still with us now. He's actually running our electrical department. We started an electrical department 3 or 4 years ago, and he's running that department. So my team is absolutely great. And then I know that Ricky had a friend that he worked with at a part-time job before he started working with me, Jimbo Britt. So Jimbo came in part-time and is still with me to this day. So I think that my pastoral background and being a minister and being a teacher was instrumental in helping me choose good people and investing in them the right way, because they've all been with me a long time. I mean, they've all been, those 4 that I just mentioned have been at least 6 years, all of them, 6, 7, 8 years. And, they're all, except for Brock, they're all millennials, and millennials they're not known for staying at places that long, but I built a pretty cool culture here, and they've upheld that culture, and it was phenomenal. So that was the employee growth track, and then financially, of course, I had to be making sales in order to afford those employees, and so the sales were coming in, and we were out traveling the country and making sales, and that's how I built this company. And then we started getting recognized in national magazines. We ended up in Inc. magazine twice as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in the country. We ended up in Entrepreneur magazine and their list of top entrepreneurial companies in the country. Nashville Business Journal won several Small Business of the Year awards. I mean, it's pinch me stuff. Like I'm a former pastor and school teacher who accidentally got into this business, and here we are. And I get a little goosebumps about it just thinking about it, because my people are great. I still pray for all the employees of this company, Energy Lighting Services, by name every single day. And I thank God for them, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do now had it not been for them to help build this business to what it is today.
Right, yeah. And this is the reason why I wanted to flip the script on this, because it's easy to see the highlight reel of what you created, but the real stuff of, we didn't have an office for 6 years. I mean, that's real stuff.
Yeah.
People think starting out, I need to go rent this office space and do this or that, or have a sexy space like we're in today. It's like, no, you don't have to start like that.
It took a long time to get this.
Yeah. So what about, though, you mentioned your people. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they think, okay, I got to fill the org chart with employees, and they're replaceable. If they don't do the job, they're out. But what's really goes into cultivating a great team and a culture that wants to keep people here long term?
Well, it starts with how you treat people. There's a saying that says your employees will never treat your customers better than you treat them. So I think that I knew that intuitively as a former pastor and school teacher, that I got to treat people nice. So what I started implementing early on, I mean, even when Ricky started, when there was no, we had no office and he didn't really know what he was doing, neither did we. When Nina started as an assistant with no office, working from her home and like having to just trust that she's getting stuff done. I mean, trusting them, empowering them to act, and believing in them and paying them a fair, not overly indulgent, I mean, that's not the right word, but what word am I looking for? But anyway, not paying them more than what the job should, and certainly not less, but a fair wage. And then once we opened up this office, now we're with each other 40 hours a week. Now, when you start working with somebody 40 hours a week, if you really think about it, you spend more time with your employees at work or your coworkers than you do your spouse and your kids.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, how am I going to create an atmosphere in this location that will keep them satisfied, fulfilled, content, and hardworking? Well, I'd worked for some crap places in the past. And I know you probably have too.
Oh, yeah, I have.
And I know that our listeners have worked, and some may right now work in crap places where your boss is an absolute a-hole. They're jerks. They don't care anything about you. You're a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
My son, side story here, doesn't work for this company anymore, but it's a local company. I'd love to blow them up. I'd love to say their name, but I'm not going to. But he worked for this company, and then they got bought out. So a new company come in. First meeting, new guy says, "You're all replaceable," and then went on to say whatever he said.
Right.
My son quit like very shortly after. I mean, not immediately, but very shortly after that. And I thought, what kind of idiot? Is it true? Absolutely, it's true. Every employee is replaceable. That's why I think entrepreneurship is so much more secure than employment, because employees are replaceable. But the reality is, you have got to treat people like they're irreplaceable,
right?
Because they deserve it. They're human beings that are putting time in, and they're putting effort and energy and blood and sweat and tears and more hours than you're paying them. You got to treat them with kindness. So I think building a culture starts just with how you treat people, and just treat them. I follow the golden rule. Jesus said, "Treat other people the way you want to be treated." And so and as much as I can, and I'm able to, and I remember to do so, I try to always do that.
Yeah. Well, I want you to dive deeper into the replaceable, because yes, they are replaceable, but it's all about how you treat them. But then what if the employee isn't performing well, and they need to be coached and trained to, like, you don't want to just say, "Hey, you're replaceable. You need to hit your numbers or get out." Like, what is the way you can actually approach that person to make sure they're actually producing?
So I was listening to a podcast several years ago. This has been, I don't know how many years ago, four years ago or so. And on the podcast was, and I don't even remember which podcast it was. I listened to a lot of them. But the best one is The Root of All Success, by the way.
Absolutely.
No, seriously. I was listening to this podcast. I don't remember which one it was because I listened to so many. And the guest was a business coach. And I don't even remember her name. But one of the things that she said stuck with me and completely changed the way I manage people. Absolutely overnight. Now, I had been in business for a long time since then, and I had muddled through the ability to keep good people, irrespective of the fact that I didn't know what I just learned on that podcast. And she said, most managers manage activity rather than results, and that's the problem. But when she said that, I was like, okay, as a sales manager, because I was the number one sales guy, I was managing the sales team, I was managing primarily for results to hit your numbers, activity. I was the guy managed for activity. Activity. Make your calls. And then I would say, as long as you do that, you'll get the results, which kind of is true, but not always true, because there's a lot of people that are hard workers that are just terrible at their job. Yeah. Just because you're a hard worker doesn't mean you're going to be successful. So when she said that, I turned the podcast off. I didn't listen to the rest of the podcast because it blew me away. It's like, I've been managing the activity, not the results. And I started running through this scenario in my brain. Well, who have I worked for in the past as an employee who managed for results and not activity? And I couldn't think of a single one that was a good person. I'd worked for them. They're like, numbers. You got to get your numbers or you're out. So I was sitting in this paradigm shift, this conundrum, this paradox rather of, okay, how do you balance, I would need results versus you got to do the work? And so I came up with something I refer to still to this day as results through integrity. Like, I want the results, but I'm going to do it through integrity. And the integrity is the activity that you put in to get the results. So I brought that back to here to this company, and I use it in all my companies now, is that results through integrity. I manage for results. And if you can't get the results, you can't stay here. But I'm not a jerk about it, because I'm going to do it through integrity, which means you're going to know exactly the work that is required to get that result. So for example, we implemented a one-page 30-day review for all. It started with salespeople, and then we eventually started using it for all the employees. And I now coach my coaching clients now to use the same thing when they need help. It's a one-page 30-day review. So at the top of the page, it essentially says, did you get the results required and agreed upon since last review, which was 30 days ago? And there's two answers, yes or no. There are no in-betweens. Yeah. It's yes or no. Did you get them or did you not? So for example, if we agreed 30 days ago that you were going to sell $1 million or whatever, did you? $999,999 is not $1 million.
Right.
Like if we agreed that it's $1 million, it's yes or no. And then if you hit no, there's a place to explain it,
Yep.
but it's still a no. Second question, did you work with integrity since the last time we met? And that doesn't just mean being honest and being forthright. It also means, did you show up on time? Did you do the activity that we agreed that needed to be done to get the results? Yes, no. No in between, yes or no. Yes, okay, great. No, okay, is there an explanation? Well, I was off for 3 weeks, I couldn't do the activity, or I got sick. It doesn't matter, it's still a no. So the deal is, if you get 2 no's, you're on a 30-day notice.
Wow.
That's it. And it's not a threat. It's not me being mean. It's we all agreed 30 days ago that this is what you agreed. I agree. I didn't dictate. We agreed. Okay, I agreed. This is the result I need. This is the integrity that I'm going to use, the activities I'm going to do to get there. We get to the end, 2 no's. Okay, what happened? You're on 30-day notice. You got to get a yes. You got to get a yes. So then the next 30 days, let's say you didn't hit the results, but you did all the work. Okay, you're still on a 30-day notice.
Yeah.
But at least now you're doing work. You just didn't get the results. And then the next 30, if you go, I got the results, but I didn't do the activity. Okay, you're not on a 30-day notice, but you are under notice that we don't just rely on results without doing the right thing. So I think it's that balance, and I know that my explanation here in the last couple of minutes isn't going to make sense to everybody that's listening, but when you really dive into that concept, it's results and integrity, it's results and activity, it's together, and you require your employees to hit that. So when an employee's not performing, which was your question, it's very simple. It's like they knew, they agreed this is what was required, and they now see they didn't do it. What is the natural outcome of any scenario in life when you didn't hit the thing you needed to do? What happens? You don't get to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's how I handled all the employees, and we've had to let people go for that very reason, salespeople specifically.
Did you find it was more acceptable from their part because they took responsibility and you know what, I didn't hit my numbers, I understand, like I'm underperforming, and that's the right decision.
Yeah, I know. There was a guy I had to let go who's a salesperson that we liked him. He's great around the office, and he was a good team player, good culture fit, everything, but he absolutely was not performing. He couldn't hit the numbers. All right, well, when it got down to like, look, dude, we've had 2 no's, or at least a no on results for the last 3 months.
Yep.
You can't do this, right? Yeah, you're right. Okay, well then that makes it simple on everybody. It's not he's not getting fired, although he is being let go, and he's not quitting. He's just we all realize, okay, you need to be deployed to other activities because this is not your thing. You need to go do something else. And if managers, employers, if owners, if entrepreneurs would take the results through integrity approach, that it makes it very clear. You and I agree this is what the result was required. It wasn't you reluctantly wanted to do it because your boss said you had to, is you agreed and now you didn't do it. Okay, did you also not do the activity that we both agreed needed to be done? Okay, well now you're a bad investment. I just spent 5, 6, 10,000, whatever I spent on your salary in the last 90 days or 50 days or 30 days. That's a bad investment. I'm getting no return for that. So This is not a charity. This is a for-profit organization.
Absolutely. Well, so you build this great company, and what most people do, either they just stay in the company, keep running it, keep making money, or, hey, I'm going to sell this thing. But you had a different approach, this exit without exiting. So what is that about?
Well, it was in 2017, 2018, and those 2 years that I began to realize that I had trapped myself by my success. And so many entrepreneurs do the same thing. I didn't even realize it was a thing, because remember, I was an unemployed school teacher. And I started this company, and we became successful pretty fast, and we became profitable, and I was making more money than I'd ever thought I would ever make in my life. Things were going really well. Employees were happy, companies growing, national recognitions. But this company required me every single day. I had to be here every day. And I took time off. And it's not like I never took a day off, but I took time off. But when I did, I was still thinking about the business, calling in. Hey, Nina, how's it going? Brock, what's happening? Ricky, do you need any help? Brendan, what's going on in the electrical department? I was calling all the time. I was always interested in making sure everything was happening. And I was the linchpin. I was the hinge around which everything turned in the business. And I hired a business coach in 2017. First time I'd ever hired one. My business partner never thought we needed one. He thought we were too smart for it. We were good. And I now know that that was a mistake. I wish I'd have hired a business coach at the beginning. I think everybody needs one at the beginning. But I hired a business coach, and he, not specifically or on purpose, but began to make me realize, holy crap, I am trapped by this business. I'm successful. I am financially successful. I've got a good business. I'm well known in the community. I've got a good reputation. Things are going well. The business is succeeding. But I'm having to be here more than I've ever had to be anywhere. This is not acceptable. So I went back to my business coach and my partner at the time too, and I said, hey, this is not what I signed up for. I don't want to do this. Well, what changed? Well, I think realization. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I've now had this realization, and let's sell it. And we actually started having those conversations. I think in 2017, 2018, started having those conversations about selling it. But here's the deal. A company whose owner is the center of everything is worth nothing.
Right.
It's worth nothing because
if you go away,
you're it. You're everything. Like, I mean, if you want to go buy a doctor practice, and the doctor he's a specialist. I mean, other than the fact that there's a customer base who may or may not stay, like the doctor is everything. You got to develop systems around it. So I thought, okay, so the business is not worth anything, or at least not worth what I would want for it. What are my options? Okay, well, it's spending the next 5 years redoing everything so that I could sell it for a certain multiple so that I could get out of the day-to-day. But then I had this thought, well, wait a minute. What if I just set up systems and processes? Now, this may seem like a no-duh moment to some of the listeners, but for me, it was revolutionary. It's like, what if I set up the business and processes and invested specifically in those 4 people that I've mentioned by name on the show today, Nina and Brock and Sperry. I mean, not Sperry. Sperry's awesome too, by the way. He's one of our senior project managers. But Nina, Brock, Brendan, and Ricky, what if I invested in them, empowered them, and delegated roles to them, and gave them a raise, and said, look, you guys are more than confident and have more than the ability to run the day-to-day operations, and I'm going to step back and I'm going to do more coaching, because I was doing a lot of that on the side anyway, on my free time, really for free, and I thought I would like to do more of that because I love teaching and helping other people grow and develop. And they were all game, like, sure, absolutely. And so through that process, I realized I can exit without exiting. Like, I can maintain ownership of the business, and I can be the owner investor rather than the owner operator. And that was what I started working towards. And now that I've accomplished that, and certainly at I've got a plan at some point where I'll sell a majority position of the company to a third party. But right now, I still own 100% of the company, and I've got a fantastic CEO who's come in, who's a good business partner and friend of mine, who Mike Dahlke, who's running day-to-day operations. My 4 leaders, Nina, Brock, Brendan, and Ricky, are running day-to-day here. We've partnered with my Mike Dahlke's got another company in another state who does similar things that we do. We're partnering and sharing opportunities and resources, and it's going amazing. Now, at some point, I won't own 100% of the company, and I'm okay with that. But right now, I'm able to go pursue. I've started an e-commerce company. I started a private equity company. I started a real estate investing company. And I started a coaching company. I started an online university. All things that I get to now do that I would have never gotten to do if this business still required 70 hours. Right. And I get to go travel. And my wife and I, we love to RV, and we go somewhere almost every single month for a week somewhere. Like a couple weeks ago, we were at a state park near Tennessee with some friends, stayed a whole week. We're leaving here shortly and going to go down to Key West for a couple of weeks. We absolutely get to do that because I've structured my life to exit without exiting.
Yeah, and I think you spoke a lot of people's language when you talked about the whole business was you. It revolved around you. It needed your attention. How can somebody set themselves up right from the beginning, and when do they know they're ready for this exit strategy? When they can empower the other people and then pay them more? Like, how do they start it, and then how do they know they're ready?
Well, I'm going to give an answer to that based on my experience over the last couple of weeks of talking to people about my coaching program. So I've got a coaching program called the Exit Accelerator, and it's a live group coaching program. You actually have participated in it. And it's no more than 12 entrepreneurs, and I take them through 12 weeks or 8 sessions, and I show them, this is what I did to exit. And it's a life-changing program. I mean, I'm not asking you to say good things about it, but people have told me after the fact, dude, this is amazing. Some people are exiting, some people are just scaling businesses, whatever it is, it's giving the opportunity. So, but here's what I'm thinking about. It's like I'm talking to people about it, and I've had a couple of people tell me, and they're probably listeners to the show, and nobody's going to know it's them except them, because they're going to know I'm talking about them. But so forgive me. I'm not trying to be mean. I talked to somebody and they're like, well, I'm not thinking about doing that until about 3 to 5 years from now. What? I don't even understand how to respond to that. It's like the whole point of this is to accelerate. That's why it's called an accelerator. The whole point of this is to accelerate that opportunity. You do not have to pull the trigger if you don't want, but wouldn't you like to pull the trigger when you want?
All right.
And if you've put this off, and I'm not saying in my cohort is the be all end all to coaching and how to get out of a business, but I'm certainly giving you a fast track. That's why I do what I do, and I'm not somebody theoretically can show you how to do it. I've done it. I know how to do it, and I've helped other people do the same thing. So if you say, well, I'm not ready. I got 3 to 5 years before I'm ready to exit. Excuse me. So you're gonna wake up 3 years from now and be ready? Well, yeah. Okay, well, what if today, over the next 90 days, you learn everything, all the secrets, all the tips, all the tricks from me and the other people in your cohort to get you prepped for that, and you're able to pull the trigger today rather than 3 years from now. And you may say, I don't want to do it until 3 years. I don't care. That's fine. Yeah. Wait 3 years, but know how to do it now. Don't we want options?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what we all want? We want the ability to pull the trigger when we want. If tomorrow I want to get up and not go to work, do I have the option to do that or not? You may say, I don't want to take time off from work. I love what I do. Okay, that's fine. But what happens when you wake up and you don't? If you wait until that moment, it's going to take longer to prepare yourself to get out of it. And that's what happened to me. I was in the business for 7 years before I realized I was trapped. And I thought, okay, how do I get out? Well, then it took me 18, 20 months to figure out how to get out. Well, now I'm helping people do it in 90 days. Now they don't have to do it in 90 days,
right, yeah.
but they have the ability, and that's all I'm saying. So all the people that I've talked to over the last couple of weeks about that, and there are people that I know, and there are also people that I don't know. Well, I'm not ready. I'm going to wait. I've probably got 3 or 4 more years. Good. Well, actually, I'll tell this story, and he'll know that I'm talking about him if he listens to my show, but nobody else will know. But he was a guy that said that I talked to about the show. He lives in another, or to the cohort, he lives in another state, and he gave me that same thing. I love my business. I don't want to get out of the business. I'm probably 3 to 7 years before I even want to think about selling the business. So I get it. I said, but trust me, once you get through this cohort, you will have options to do what you want when you want and not have to wait. Because right now, your self-imposed 3 to 7 year thing that you're talking about is only because you know you ain't ready. That's right. The only reason you're saying that.
Exactly.
And you're not going to do anything between now and then to get yourself ready. You're just that's an excuse. And I wasn't certainly as harsh as what that just sounded like when I was talking to him. But he came into the cohort, finished the cohort, had a good time, and then I did my post cohort interview with him, just one-on-one. How'd it go? What do you think? And he goes, man, he said, Jason, I told you at the beginning I wasn't ready to exit, 3 to 7 years probably. He said, and I still am not. He said, but you know what? He goes, what I've learned in this has allowed me to get a ton of time back. Now I can scale my business. He said, before I had I had my foot on the pedal to the metal 100% of the time just to keep the business going. Right. He said, but because I've learned how to delegate and how to eliminate stress and how to establish the right systems and processes and invest in people, because I've learned that, my business is scaling so much faster than it had I waited 3 to 7 years. Wow. And I was, of course, happy to hear that. And I could have said, I told you so, I didn't. But like that, that's what this whole thing is. And so I know this sounds like a huge promotion for my thing, and that's not what we're trying to do here. But I live this.
Right.
Energy lighting services is one of the biggest blessings in my life. It allowed me to create income I would never would have been able to have otherwise, certainly as a teacher or a pastor. And the people that work for me in this company now, because I'm still the president and owner of the company, but I'm not involved day to day. I thank God for them by name every day, because they're amazing employees, they're amazing team members, and I'm so grateful for them, because now I get to go and tell other people how to do the same thing. Yeah. There's so much to do in life than just running the business every day. There's some more things to go do. Even if you love your business, there's more to go do.
Yeah. Yeah, in the Exit Accelerator, it's an amazing program, and I actually went through it myself because I did the exit without exiting in one of my businesses, but I just did it by choice. Like I was trying to figure this out on my own. So I wanted to see what his program was because I have business owners coming to me that want to do that, but I don't want to teach it. So I went through Jason's program because my own integrity, I have to be like, okay, I need to know what your program is to be able to refer people to you. I like you, you're a cool guy. Just because you say you have this program, I want to know. So I went through it, and I got to say, I wish I would have known this back before I did my whole exit without exiting, because I would have, one, it would have been a lot faster, and it would have been a lot smoother. There were so many ups and downs along the way that I would have been able to overcome had I have done the program before that. So it is an amazing program, and yeah, everybody should check that out. It's something anybody starting a business should go there. So they have that exit mindset where you set up your business where that could be the goal. And I like how you said it. It could be on their timeline. It doesn't have to be like, because when you're getting started with the business, it's just exciting. It's like, oh, I'm not even thinking about exiting at this point. But that's part of the problem. If you're not thinking about exiting, you're going to build the business around you, and that's not what you need to do. So you mentioned coaching, because that's what you're doing now, but how important was coaching for you in your own business?
Well, like I said earlier, I think when I hired my first business coach in 2017, I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what I needed. I just knew that I needed an outside perspective, and I believe that's the beauty of a business coach and a bookkeeper is they give you outside perspective on things that you can't see yourself. Because no matter how good you are at the numbers, you're not looking at them the same way an unbiased, unemotionally connected person is going to look at your numbers. They're going to say, Jason, you did this wrong. You did this wrong. You spend too much money here, blah, blah, blah. That's why you need a bookkeeper. I also need a business coach because they're going to look at things unemotionally attached. They're not attached emotionally to the outcome. And you know, if they say, hey, you're overemployed, you have too many people, they're not attached to Sally or Bob, you know, they don't care. They're going to say, listen, they got to go. You got to, where I am going to be looking at it through blinders. So when I hired that business coach, I didn't know what I didn't know. I just knew I needed one. And I interviewed, I think 5 or 6 people. And I was pretty serious about it. I took it as serious as hiring an employee because the cost of a business coach is about that of an employee or greater. And I interviewed a bunch of people, and I ended up finding a guy by the name of BJ Howard, who was a well-known consultant and had been very successful Ford Motor Company, and went off and started his own practice consulting. He has since passed away, God rest his soul. But BJ was amazing. BJ came in and helped me and my business partner at the time see things that we had never seen before, even though my business partner was against the idea. He didn't think we needed it. Now, he was a good sport about it and participated and didn't do it reluctantly. He was actually fully involved in the meetings. But when we hired BJ to come in and coach us, he came every couple of weeks and talked with us for a couple of hours, and holy crap, I mean, things started flourishing. What we focused on, how we did things. We ended up starting an electrical contracting division as a result of meeting with a coach. We didn't know that's something we should do, and it made so much sense to start that. And now ELS Electric is one of the top-rated electrical contracting firms in the Middle Tennessee area. If you go look at our Google reviews, I don't think we have a single review that's not 5-star. I mean, who has that in the service industry? And thank you to everybody who gave us the 5 stars. But we've tried really hard to build that, and that came directly out of a coach. And then at the end of my partnership with my partner at the time, he was extremely helpful and instrumental of helping us work through a terrible time of figuring that out, because as you might imagine, that's normally not a very happy process when you have to terminate a partnership. But that was really how that was the inevitable thing that had to happen to keep the business intact, because we were struggling with things that were not going to be allowed. We weren't going to be able to survive it otherwise if we hadn't fixed the partnership. But BJ was a very, very big help on that. And then I hired other coaches and hired sales coaches to come in and work with my sales team. And then since I've exited the operations of the business, I've hired people like Mitch Russo to work with me. I've hired Steve Carless and Hank Norman out of New York, 2 Market Media, to help me with my messaging and marketing, and video presence, et cetera. I mean, I'm doing the podcast today because of Mitch Russo. Mitch Russo said, you need to go do it. And I always wanted to do one, but he made me go do it.
Right.
Like, he's like, hey, it's time to go do this. So big thanks to Mitch on that. So, and then my message, Exit Without Exiting. I had done it and knew that that's what I did and that's what I called it, but I didn't know that was a thing until Hank Norman said, there's your thing. Yeah. And so Hank was very instrumental in helping me figure that out, and Steve's helped me on the back end. So coaching, listen, if you're an entrepreneur without a coach, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, you've got to have a coach. At the very least, get an indirect coach. Join a membership where you can sit in on live sessions with a group of people. At least get something. But it would be best to hire one, at least one-on-one or in a group setting where you can sit down and have direct access to a coach. It'll change your life. It'll change your business because you can't see what you can't see.
Right, yeah. And a lot of business owners, they get a coach, like maybe they've grown to a certain level and they've plateaued, or maybe things are just going wrong and like, hey, I need a coach. But how early in their business should they get a coach?
Day one. I think I use this example a lot, and I know people think it's self-serving because I am a coach and I charge for coaching services, but I've said this ever since I hired BJ. Like, once I hired BJ and I saw what happened, I started telling the people that I was coaching kind of on the side, I was telling them, hey, you need a coach. Or other people who'd come to me, not in the coaching relationship, say, Jason, I'm starting a business. What do I need to do? You need to hire a coach. Coach and a bookkeeper. Got to have those day one. Why? Because I'm telling you, I did it without them and I screwed things up. So I think you got to do it day one. And I use this example a lot, is that if you were going to open an ice cream store and you only had a certain amount of money available to you to open the store, and you spent 100% of your money on the actual physical location and the freezers and the cash register, but you bought no ice cream or no milk, right, or whatever, to make the ice cream, you would never say, well, I can't afford it, but I'm going to open anyway. Well, what are you going to sell? You don't have anything to sell. I think hiring a business coach is as important as the ice cream owner having ice cream. You've got to have it. It's part of the thing that you need to operate your business. Now, the engagement level that you work with your coach, certainly every business has got different engagement levels. You might need to meet with a coach weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, but you need somebody to give you perspective. It's that important.
Yeah, and I think there's different phases in the life cycle of the business, and a lot of people, when they start off, they are doing everything, like you did when you started off. Everything, you were doing everything, but then it became that you had to do everything. And I was there too. Became a slave to my business. Like, I had to do everything. But I believe everybody has strengths and talents and abilities, and they need to stay in their own lane and surround themselves with the right people. Like, even for us, we're both successful business coaches, but for me, and even I did the Exit Without Exiting as well, but I don't want to teach that. Like, that's not my heart. The systems, the processes, the procedures, I work with the person and help them become the person they need to become. But I surrounded myself with you because if they're struggling in the business processes, I can say, hey, there's a perfect coach for that. How important is somebody in their business? Because part of the mindset is I can do it better than everyone else because I have my heart's in it more. Well, what is your advice to them about letting go of some of those things and surrounding themselves with the people that can do it?
Well, this is something I refer to in my coaching program all the time as the hero syndrome, is that we as the entrepreneur, as the founder of the business, we have this thing called hero syndrome, where we are the person that shows up with the cape every time there's a problem. The bat light goes off in the sky, there's an issue, somebody needs help, something happened, you show up and you save the day. And at first, when you start your business, you have to be the hero. There is no way around it, because if you're not, you're never going to get the business going. You have to show up and solve the problems the first day, first week, first month, first year maybe. But at some point, you can't be the hero. It's just like when a baby horse is born, right? A baby horse is born, and I'm not a farmer, so if I get part of the details wrong, forgive me. But when a baby horse is born, within a few hours, the horse can stand on its own, and within a couple days, it's running, right? Generally, that's how nature works. But if the farmer is there to catch the horse on the way out of the mom, and then carries that little foal, is that what it is? Foal? Yeah. Colt, foal, whatever. Baby horse, carries that baby horse around without letting it walk. It'll never walk.
Right.
And that's what entrepreneurs do to their businesses. They show up, they do it all, they're the entrepreneur hero, and they never let the business learn to walk on its own. Wow. And so when I started the process of Exit Without Exiting here at ELS, and I went to Nina and Brock and Ricky and Brendan, and I said, hey, you guys are going to be I'm going to promote you to vice president, you guys are going to get raises, and here's what's going to happen, you're going to run day to day. like they stumbled around a little while. They didn't know how to walk on their own because I'd been carrying the business for a long time. So it took a while, and they got scared, and they made decisions I wouldn't have made, and they did things wrong, and they did some things right in a way that I would have never thought of. But the issue is there's going to be a dip when you start delegating. And an entrepreneur's got to be comfortable with the dip. There's going to be a time, you got to survive the dip. That's what I say. You know, you're the entrepreneur hero. You got to first recognize that and realize, okay, I can't be this anymore. You start delegating things out, there's going to be a dip in outcome, dip in productivity. They're not going to do it the way you did. They're going to do it as good as you did it because you're better. You started the business. But just like when I hired Ricky, you know, he was not terrible at his job. He just didn't know how to do it. It wasn't that he was good or bad. He just didn't know. But as soon as he started learning, and I started saying, okay, you go do these lighting audits. You work with manufacturers to negotiate pricing. Was he as good as me? Absolutely not. I was much better. But had I continued to do it, you and I wouldn't be having this podcast today, and Ricky would probably be working somewhere else. But I survived the dip. So there was a dip in what Ricky was able to do output. Same thing with Brock and Nina and Brendan. Every employee, there's a similar story. But I survived the dip, and today, the dip isn't a dip anymore. They are outperforming anything I would have been able to do. I couldn't do what Ricky does every day. He's much better at it than me. Nina knows finances better than I'll ever know finances. She knows, and so all of those things are realities when you quit being the hero, and you've got to stop being the hero.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious for you because a lot of people, they get to this point in business and you've done the exit without exiting. So people think, oh, I'm just going to go sit on the beach somewhere. But you started other companies, you created this Exit Accelerator to teach other business owners. What drove you to do that?
Well, I think that you know, I learned from a coach what my superpower is. You know, when you used the hero thing there a minute ago. And so my superpower is teaching. I used to think it was sales. I thought that's because I'm really good at it, but I don't like it. I don't get energy from it. So it's not my superpower. It's not that thing. And my superpower is teaching. So I thought, okay, once I exit without exiting, I'm going to do these other things because my superpower is teaching. But I want to tell you this, and this is what I was not prepared for, and I know that a lot of people are not, as entrepreneurs, not prepared for this. So when you do exit and you don't, whether you sell it outright financially and you're done, or you just exit operations like I did, there's going to be a time of identity crisis.
Oh yeah.
And I went, you did it too, man. We both did this. And I know dozens of entrepreneurs, similar thing. They sell their business, they get out of their business, and they go through a terrible identity crisis because I would carry business cards in my wallet or my pocket that said President and CEO of Energy Lighting Services. If I went to an event, what do you do? If I was out camping and somebody said, what do you do? I am President and CEO of Energy Lighting Services. That's how that was my identity. Whether I needed to do that, wanted to do that, or it was healthy to do it, it was the reality of who I thought I was. And so when I exited, I remember sitting down with one of my coaches, one of my advisors, Jason Weiss, and I sat down with him and I said, we met, and I'm like, I don't know who I am. Like, how do I introduce myself? And he was like, dude, it's okay. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do as an advisor, like tell me you're going to be fine. But that identity crisis was real. I didn't know how do I introduce myself anymore. I'm not President and CEO of Energy Lighting Services. I'm still president. I still own it, but I don't do it every day. It's not the thing I do. So how do I introduce myself? And it took me, I want to say 6 to 8 months, maybe longer, before I got comfortable with that. And it was bad. I mean, I wasn't depressed. There's nothing. I didn't have any issues. But just not knowing who I was. So I remember introducing myself to a guy at the Standard Club one time, and he's like, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, that's all I had. I didn't know, I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but I didn't know what to say. He goes, well, what kind of businesses, or I can't remember if he said it plural or singular. And I told him about this one because it's the only one I knew to talk about. He goes, oh, okay, what do you do? Well, you know, I don't really run it anymore. And he thought that was cool that I didn't run it anymore, but I'm thinking, not cool, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know, what am I supposed to be doing myself every day? So when I had that moment of, that wasn't moment, it was months of identity crisis, I went back to what a coach had taught me about my superpower and said, hey, what is your superpower? What are you uniquely qualified to do? I think people call it unique ability, or Ikagai as the Japanese word for what you're uniquely qualified to do. I call it superpower because I think it's the thing that you can do that nobody else can do. It's like, what is it? And mine was teaching. I said, okay, so how do I take that and the knowledge that I have of what I've accomplished in life as an entrepreneur, as a pastor, as a teacher, and then turn that back to the world for profit and for impact. Because it's both. I don't want to just profit, and I don't just want to impact. I want to do both. How do I do that? And that's when I heard Coach again.
Yeah.
And I called Mitch Russo, and I said, Mitch, I remember having the first meetings with him over Zoom, and I said, I've got all this information. I'm a good teacher, but I don't know what to do with it. Do I start a school? Do I start a coaching platform? What do I do? And originally, I started Results University. I started an online university thinking that was going to be the thing. And as it turns out, I still have courses, but that's not the main thing I do now. I have settled into this exit. I'm the exit guy. Like, if you want to know how to exit a business, I'm the guy, because I've done it. I know how to do it. I've showed other people how to do it. And it's that unique thing that I am qualified to do in the world that people need. That people need to know how to get out of their own way. There are other things you want to do in life. So that's how I did it. And then the other businesses that I started was because I believe in impact and investing in people. And so I started an apprenticeship program where I bring on young men, 22 to 29 years old, who want to own businesses. And I show them everything they need to know how to run businesses. And when they come on board, I start a business. And so I started an e-commerce company and said, okay, I'm going to show you, you're going to see how to start it, how to run it, how to grow it, how to lose money at it, because that's what happens. You're going to see all this stuff. And so that's why I started these other companies. Now, some have turned out much better than others, but I think I'm done starting them. I think I'm going to buy them now. I'm done with startups. It's too hard.
Right. Well, and I think that identity piece was huge, because I went through the same thing myself. And I think a lot of people that's still in their business, their identity is built around that. And I think there's a lot of freedom when realizing your identity is not what you do. It's not your degrees, it's not your job title. Your identity is who you are. And I think it's harder when you're in the business, but if you just think about, if this all went away today, who am I? What is my superpower? And really finding those real qualities. So for you, it was the teaching. So it came full circle for you.
Yeah.
That was your passion, that was your ability. Now you get to bring that to the world through what you do today. So how would you advise people on finding their identity outside of their business?
So I wasn't prepared for this question, so I'm going to have to think through how I'm going to answer this. There's this concept called Ikagai. It's a Japanese word, Ikigai. I may be mispronouncing it. But one of my friends reminded me of this, not just frequently, but I've known it for a long time. One of my coaches that taught me and revealed to me my superpower used a version of it. I think there's like a unique ability, which is a famous book Dan Sullivan wrote about it. As a matter of fact, that podcast I referred to earlier, the business coach on that show was a strategic coach in his program. But this idea is there's 4 categories. There's what is it that you love to do, that you absolutely have, to use the word I talk about a lot on this show, passion. What do you really love to do? You get energy from it, that time. What do you enjoy? You get energy from it. All right, then the second is, what are you good at? What are you uniquely qualified to do? The better than anybody else. And certainly, most people are going to have multiple things. They're going to say, well, I'm good at sales, or I'm good at this. Like I thought it was sales. And then the third category is, what are you? What will people pay you for? Like you got to be able to monetize it. Because if you're good at it and you love it, but you can't make money at it, well, that's probably not your superpower, because there's got to be profit and impact. And then the fourth one is impact. What's going to change the world? What does the world need? So it's those 4 things. And again, I probably butchered that for people that are paying attention to this, but what is it that, if that's a Venn diagram where all the circles intersect in those 4 categories, in the center, that's your superpower. And for me, I thought, okay, I'm good at sales, the world needs it, and I can get paid for it, but I don't love it. Okay, that's not it. Okay, so it's got to hit all 4. And then, okay, what other things fit those categories? And it was my wife and me at this retreat with one of our business coaches. It was Michael Burt was there leading the retreat, and Tim Story was there as well, which I've hired both of those guys to coach me, life coaching and business coach. My wife and I were at that retreat going through that, and I don't know who said it first, but teaching. And so I looked at that diagram, and I'm like, okay, I love it. Oh, I absolutely get energy from it. I love it. Not like sales. Because I don't ever love that. Like I'm good at it, but I don't get energy from it.
Right.
Am I good at it? Yeah, I'm good at teaching. Does the world need it? Absolutely. There's impact there, and can I get paid for it? Sure. I don't know how, but I figured that out much later. I didn't know how I was going to get paid for my expertise. So those are the 4 things, and I think that as entrepreneurs who listen to this show, you've got to sit down and do the work. What is it where did those 4 circles intersect for you? And right now, actually, Justin, this is God's honest truth. Right now, I've got one of my best friends that we meet his name is Justin as well. We meet every Wednesday morning for coffee, and we're about to start going through that together because he's at that place of identity crisis for himself. And like he's at a place where he's not selling a business, but kind of sunsetting a business and moving to another thing because he's been very successful. But he's dealing with, who am I? What am I going to do next? I've done this thing for 20 years. I don't know how to do anything else. Yeah. So he and I are together going to go through that process. So I'm doing a lot of research right now on Ikagai, on unique ability, on what I call superpower. And so anybody that has resources on that, I'm interested. So if you got it, I'm interested because I'm doing research because I want to create a course and help other people do the same thing that helped me figure out who I need to be.
Yeah. Well, it just reminded me earlier this week, I heard Bob Proctor talking about years ago, he asked Earl Nightingale, he said, man, what's the secret to all this? And he said, there's no secret. He said, it's really simple. Sit down and decide what you love doing and devote your life to it. He said, everybody loves something. Find out what you love and devote your life to it. So it seems kind of cool in your story that teaching is what you love and you've devoted your life to it, and it's provided financially, it's provided fulfillment for you and impact that you're making through what you truly love. Now, I know this isn't something you normally do on your show, but since we flipped the script, I get to ask the questions. What kind of people would benefit from your Exit Accelerator? And you've got events coming up. Who are you looking for to help?
Well, the Exit Accelerator, if you are an entrepreneur who owns a business, you can benefit. I know that's very vague and it's not really very specific, but the reality is that most entrepreneurs have, when I ask, why did you start your business? Why did you do it? They'll give 1 of 2 or 3 reasons. And they'll say, hey, I wanted more control over my time and I want to make more money. Those are usually the top 2. And then if I ask, okay, are you making more money than you made when you were working in the business world? Half the time they say yes, half the time they say no, which is the scary part, because if you can make more money in the business world, why are you doing the business in the first place? But then when I say, well, do you have more time? It is 90% of the time they say, no, I do not have more time. Okay, so again, why are you doing this? So what I would say is that the Exit Accelerator gives you both those things back. Is you get more time back and you figure out how to leverage your money so that you get more money. That's what an investment is. So the little bit that you would invest in time and money into the course gets you untold dollars and cents more and untold hours and days and weeks more of your life back to go do what you truly love. So I think anybody who owns a business, that this is for them. And especially for that guy that says, well, I'm 3 to 5 years out. Oh, okay. You need this more than anybody because, or I don't have time to do it. Of course you don't have time to do it. That's why I'm saying you need to do it. So I think that's the main thing. If you own a business, no matter how much you love it, there's going to be a day when you're not going to be running it. Whether you're dead, whether you're sick, whether you burn out, are you prepared for that day? And if you're not prepared for that day, you need the course. And I think that if you don't prepare for that day, you're selfish. And not that if you don't do my course, you're selfish. I'm saying if you don't prepare for that day, you're selfish because your employees are depending upon that business to provide their livelihood. And if you're the center of that business, something happens to you, something happens to them too. And that's selfish. If you're not preparing to protect your employees, which I think my company is now in a much better place for them, for their sake, than had I stayed the president and CEO.
Yeah, and that was a shift for me back then, was having that thought of, man, if something happened to me, this could all go away. And that was a scary thought. So being prepared in advance is huge. So I mean, I've been through your program. I highly recommend it. So it's an amazing program. Every business owner should go through it. And man, I appreciate you having me here today to flip the script and actually take over your podcast, because man, you are an expert in what you do. So I wanted people to actually hear that, because man, you're an incredible entrepreneur story. You're not just somebody out here teaching it, you're somebody who's lived it. So thank you again for having me here, and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, this has been fun. Ever since you mentioned this to me, I think we were driving down to Nashville together one night to go hang out at the Standard. You mentioned it, and I thought, that's a good idea. I just didn't know when we were going to be able to pull it off, but I'm honored that you take the time to do this. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate you as a friend.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I'll
I'll turn back to the camera and kind of close this thing out. So this is weird for me, because this show is not about Jason Duncan, even though my name is on the show, but this show is about people who sit across from me, and it's about how they got to success. And so today, I hope that this has been helpful to you to understand a little bit of my story, how I built a successful company and successful companies, and how I'm helping other people do the same thing. And my definition of success, as we talk about on the show a lot, is just getting the results you hope for. And so you got to ask yourself, as an entrepreneur, what did you hope for when you started the business? If you don't have that, you're not successful. I don't care how much money you've got. That success is getting the results you hope for. So what are you hoping for? What did you want? What was your goal? And that's why I do the show, is I want to show you, when I interview other people, not like today I got interviewed, but when I interview other people, that there is success out there to be had, as long as you're going for it the right way. And if you're accepting or settling for anything less than that, that's not success. That's not success. So if you're interested in that Exit Accelerator that Justin and I were talking about earlier in the show, go to exitwithoutexiting.com. It's very simple, exitwithoutexiting.com. Sign up for a cohort. Spend the money to get in the cohort. Spend the time. What I tell people all the time is, you give me 24 hours, I will change your life. It's 8 one-hour sessions, and there's about 2 hours worth of homework between sessions. So it's 24 hours total. It'll change your life. It'll change your family's life. It'll change your business's life, and you'll finally get to that place where you can do what you really want to do. And I tell you what, I will make you a deal. If you'll reach out to me through Instagram at @TheRealJasonDuncan on Instagram, and you'll mention, just send me a DM that said, no code words or anything, but just say, hey, I listened to that show and I want to do the cohort, give me the discount. I got a special discount for you, just because you listened to the show and you're going to take action because you heard the show. And Justin also mentioned that an event, and so I'm going to go ahead and do a quick plug for that event. And I know we've got a promo that we're going to tag onto this show either at the beginning or after the show. My editors will handle that later. But Justin and I are actually hosting a conference in Nashville, Tennessee in February of 2022. So we want you to be there. It's going to be a Thursday night, all day Friday and Saturday conference called the Exit Lifestyle, Building a Business so you can cash out. And we've got internationally recognized speakers that are going to be coming in to share with you their perspective on what it means to live something we call the exit lifestyle. So if you want to know about that, go to theexitlifestyle.com and you can read all about it, theexitlifestyle.com. So big thanks to Dr. Justin Mosely for first having the idea to do this, and then also be willing to come in and flip the script and interview me today. I'm the real Jason Duncan. This was The Root of All Success, and Jesus is King. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we invite you to visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Take charge of your business. Grow it from great to incredible. Join us again next time here on The Root of All Success.